This is Ken Pyle with VOD TV. We're at the Independent Show, the NCTC ACA Independent Show.
Absolutely.
Matt Polka is with us, and Matt, you just were on a panel talking about a lot of things regarding regulatory and legislative. One of the themes that came out of that was just the burden of regulations.
Oh, sure. You know, that our association at the American Cable Association was founded in 1992 because smaller independent companies had to deal with what was the disproportionate cost of video regulation, rate regulation at the time. And so that's why we created this association, to be that independent voice to say, wait a minute, in our smaller rural markets, we're different than the big companies. We have fewer customers per mile, and consequently, when you have the unfunded mandates of regulation, it disproportionately affects us because it costs more per subscriber to comply. Well, this same issue continues through video regulation, through the digital television transition, to now where we're in the broadband world. Washington talks very much about we need to get more broadband into rural areas, but they're still regulating smaller companies many times as if they're larger companies, and that threatens the ability of smaller companies to actually provide the level of broadband service that policymakers want in rural areas.
Well, last night, and you know, one of the best things about coming to a conference like this is the serendipitous thing, who you run into, who you meet. Last night I had a nice conversation with someone from South Carolina who started their cable system relatively late. I mean, 20 years ago, and you have quite a few members like that. He has 1,000 subscribers now. When he started it, it was a cable system, but now it would really be more of a broadband system. And I was doing the math. He has 1,000 subscribers. Without him, they would not get broadband because the incumbent wasn't there. And I'm just, as I did the math on it, I'm thinking, you know, this guy isn't drawing a lot of money for himself, right?
Oh, absolutely. No, most of our member companies, when you talk to them, they are hometown companies. They live and work in the communities where they serve. And basically, this has been, for them, a labor of love, because there's been a need in their community that they have sought to meet with their business. Now, what's interesting going forward is you're going to see a trend. In fact, I know Kagan has published a study recently that shows within a year's time, those of us that are video providers that provide service to subscribers, within a year's time, the number of broadband subscribers that we serve will actually surpass the number of cable video subscribers we serve, which is huge. I mean, that is a major point to consider, because it shows the transformation from what is a video business to what our members will be as a broadband business. And that's why what we do is so important, to ensure that these smaller companies, their unique concerns can be heard by Washington, because if it's not, then we're going to see more of what's already happened. We had a video this morning from Acting Chairwoman Clyburn at the FCC, and she noted that over the last few years, 800 cable systems, small cable systems, serving some 40,000 subscribers, have shut down because of the cost of regulation, the cost of rising programming. That's a lost opportunity, where there is no longer a wireline provider who can be that broadband connection, not just video and telephone, that broadband connection. So we want to preserve that.
Well, and it makes sense. And, you know, as going back to that conversation I had last night, I just, you know, I get the impression that there's probably a lot of your members that don't come out here because they're so busy just trying to keep the lights turned on and keep their customers happy. And similarly, they probably can't get out to Washington to, you know, your great events.
It's really tough, which is why we work with them to help them understand you can make the same difference. You can have the same influence from back home contacting your congressmen and senators on these issues as if you come to our ACA Summit next year, April 1, 2, 3 in Washington, 2014. We love to have them there because there's nothing like taking them into their congressional offices, and we get many members that do that. But at the same time, they can have an impact because they're the providers. I mean, they are the service providers providing the service that the policymakers want them to provide. So it's something that's very, very important for not only for our industry, but really for our country. When you look at these smaller markets, they deserve the same level of service, and that's what we're trying to help them to achieve.
Well, that's interesting. You mentioned for our country. I think there's a national security aspect to this as well, having a robust infrastructure everywhere, right?
Oh, without question. I mean, we are in a global economy. And companies that migrate to smaller markets, rural areas, business services, that's a huge issue for our members as a new source of business development to provide high-level internet service to the business community as opposed to the residential community, and we see more and more of our members doing this. So to be part of the economy today in the changing economy, you have to have that robust business level of internet service, even in the smaller markets. But you're right, on the broader perspective, what's good for our country, how we take part in this global economy, our member companies have to be able to provide the same amount of service as in the middle of Times Square in New York City. But Washington will say a lot about that in terms of how heavily they regulate the smaller company whose views and needs are much different than the big companies in larger markets.
Well, Matt, always appreciate your perspective and learning from you. So.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.